Overseas UK, which I thought was called Republicans Abroad. It's not. His name is Erol Morkoc. Erol, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Okay, I don't know why I said you were former. Look, I'm just making mistakes all tonight. It's just dreadful. Just can't get the staff, Erol. Just can't get the staff. Ashes away, so your Uncle Andre's at play. Look, okay, I'm just going to ask you a straight-up question. What do you think about this Donald Trump situation?
Well, I mean, beyond the obvious response, Alvin Bragg is not going to be the first prosecutor as of now to bring an indictment against a president. This has crossed a proverbial Rubicon. It's one of the most outrageous sort of moments in the political gamesmanship of America, and it's going to go down as a colossal overplaying of the hand by the Democrat Party. This is a charge that wasn't prosecuted at the federal level, wasn't prosecuted at the state level. This is a borough of New York, Manhattan specifically, that is going to single-handedly try to perp walk the president because they believe that they can, I guess, win over middle America or some sort of moderate voter by turning this country into a kangaroo court banana republic. So it's a sad day.
I've got a couple of things, but first of all, I keep hearing this phrase perp walk. What is it?
Okay, so we have this phrase in America, like the perpetrator has to walk down the aisle of shame. But really what that means is you get your fingerprints scanned, they take your picture, you hold the sign. I don't think they have the sign anymore, but that's the idea. It's the idea is to, now here, it's glad you brought that up because on the Republican side, my friends in the Trump team, they're already saying they want to be there. They've requested to have cameras on the ground. They're going to turn this into exactly.
Yeah, so he's got a choice. He can go via an internal walkway from the police station to the court, or he can go out into the street and do the perp walk.
I think, well, everything is done internally, but he's going to have the right to have his Secret Service people there and his own people there. Also, there's a really weird circumstance. You can't handcuff a president because of Secret Service. So there's a lot of situations that might just end up with a very benign sort of photo op, and the Trump team wants to have the photo op for them, while the Democrats want to have the photo op for themselves. They both believe that it's going to help each other. If you think about it, to some degree, the Democrats have an idea. The 30,000 emails that Hillary Clinton destroyed, regardless if you think they're real or not, people in middle America who heard about that said, that seems suspicious. Just like somebody in middle America who's maybe not following this will see President Trump getting his fingerprints and say, well, I guess he's a criminal. So that's sort of the logic, and both sides are thinking that it's going to play to their favor.
So it's the idea, Erol, that we are attempting to just galvanise America once again. You know, there are a group of people who basically will say, I'm willing to throw out my principles, I'm willing to throw out the rule of law, I'm willing to throw out American democracy just because I believe that Donald Trump's such a git. And there are other people who are going to say, well, do you know what? The idea that I'm under attack and Donald Trump's under attack from Democrat America is a reason to galvanise. Then there's going to be a lot of people in between who are going to have to take sides. And that is classic galvanisation.
Yeah, I mean, you have to almost wonder if there's foreign influence trying to divide the internal fabric of the country, because this isn't helpful to anybody. It certainly isn't helpful to just the regular Joe Sixpack who's trying to get through this economic malaise. You're seeing, a definite effort to push the narrative away from sort of the failures in Ukraine, the economic failures, the geopolitical failures, trying to sort of bring this to the forefront. But the American people are feeling so much economic pain right now. And it's not just like, oh, it's a little bit bad. Like, things are really, really grim if you're not in the top 10% of the United States economically right now. And that, coupled with this, where Donald Trump came out and said, look, they're not after you, they're after me. I'm just in the way. And they're going to prove him right. It seems like a poor move. If you look back when the Democrats eliminated the filibuster, well, that's what got Donald Trump the ability to have 3 Supreme Court justices. So these situations that Democrats do, when they come back the other way, I mean, Donald Trump's the most investigated man in America. If we investigated Joe Biden to the same degree, believe me, we would find some misdemeanors in there. So, I mean, this is going to start, basically a Lord of the Flies of American post-presidential politics. It's awful.
Question from me, Alex, if I can. I'm Dave, of course. If Trump is convicted of any offence which stops him from being the president, going for the presidency, what do you think will be the result on the public in America? How will they react to it if he's barred from standing in election in 2024?
Wow, that's a really tough question. Now, I will say that the time frame for this trial to go through will probably extend past that date. But should that happen, you're talking real civil unrest, because this would be a misdemeanor state charge that's being now. Alvin Bragg in the Manhattan DA is famous for downgrading felonies to misdemeanors.
Yeah.
An upgrade from a misdemeanor to a felony? Not so. This would be a situation where you'd have a state felony. Does it bar you from holding federal office?
Sure.
You could start a political movement that would end up in states starting to say, well, we're not being represented by Washington. Not like a civil war. There's not going to be guys in muskets having a war. This is going to happen in legislature. And so you could start talking about the breakup of America if something like that was to happen at the very end.
And actually, you took the thoughts right out. Right, you articulated my thoughts exactly there. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the thing that worries me is what you just said there, Errol, is this could extend beyond the next presidential election. Could we be in a position, well, presumably the answer to this is going to be yes, but so let me rephrase it completely. What would we do if we were in a position when a man is elected to the White House whilst he's under criminal investigation and is required perhaps to even face court whilst being president, talking about executive privilege and debates as to whether he can be in any trouble? Presumably he'd be impeached again immediately. Talk us through that wonderful uncharted territory.
I mean, you're starting to look at, maybe we would have to look at some historical examples. What happens in Brazil? Would former leaders need to flee the country immediately after an election to disassociate themselves from the behavior of the populace? In this circumstance, I mean, it is really nearly impossible to say what the.
I mean, if Donald Trump was to be convicted and potentially thrown in prison, he would presumably have grounds to claim political asylum in the United States, in the United Kingdom, on the grounds that the laws that exist that he's being prosecuted over don't exist in Britain, not in the same way, and he's basically British. I mean, I always say he's only ever had two political jobs. One is President of the United States of America, and the other is Trade Ambassador for the government of Scotland. So I mean, he's got some pedigree.
True. And his mother was born in Fife, so he's the son of an immigrant. He has.
Sutherland.
It was Lewes, wasn't it? But either way, I love when he said his mum was from Lewes in Scotland, which is proper Scotland, which is a reference to being a Highlander, not a Lowlander. Now that's specialist knowledge. There's very few Americans, very few English that would know the difference.
It's the real Gaelic people.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, Errol. Look, I just want you to now, because we've only got a couple more seconds with you, just to give me some sense about what your prediction is for the future on all of this.
I think what we're going to have happen is on Tuesday, unless there's a Mexican standoff between, for example, DeSantis has said he would not extradite President Trump, and this is a state charge, but barring some sort of confusing behavior like that, I think we're going to see Donald Trump go down there, go through his perp walk, and on Tuesday walk out of this courthouse probably about an hour later. And we're not going to hear about this until the end of the election, because the time frame for this from seed to shelf is over a year, and the amount of appeals and everything that come after it. And the idea, of course, just to be so your viewers know, I mean, you can't really put a president in prison. You can put them in house arrest, but the Secret Service has to protect them. So you can't incarcerate Secret Service members in a cell with the president. So
So I've just realised something. My producer said Errol is so good, we're going to keep him on, right? So you're not being dumped off at the moment, but we are going to be joined by John Christopher Boer, who's a White House correspondent for Real Political News. John Christopher, I mean, I don't know how much you've heard of this, but I think there's significant concerns that this is not a federal prosecution, it's not a state prosecution, it's a local prosecutor who was elected on the grounds that he would prosecute Donald Trump. Doesn't it just undermine the entire American Republic?
Absolutely not. Let's stop right here. Okay. This is a tax evasion problem.
Okay.
This is calling his business. He took money out of his business and he made it he took it off his tax, and this is $130,000 that he gave to his poor sycophant Michael Cohen for a prostitute to shut up.
Hang on 1 second. No, John Christopher, we can say all sorts of things, but I mean, to be fair, Stormy Daniels is an adult entertainer. I've seen no evidence that she's a prostitute.
She's happy to say it. She's a sex worker, and I adore her.
That doesn't make her a prostitute necessarily.
Marvelous.
Okay. I've said what I've said. Go on, continue.
She's a paid porn artist.
Yeah. Okay. Well. Yeah. Okay. Well, look. Can I say this to you? Look, it seems to me wholly sensible that you would finance your lawyer talking to all sorts of people who represent you or represent reputational damage to you. What is the problem with instructing Michael Cohen to simply say, look, you deal with all my problems and send me the bill at the end of the month?
Michael Cohen was asked to pay off Stormy Daniels just before the 2016 presidential election. Cohen took out a mortgage. The poor son of a gun took out a mortgage. He went to jail for this activity. He took out a mortgage to pay for his co-op, and he gave her $130,000. Then Donald used those funds, took it out of his business and a business organization to repay Michael Cohen, and then Trump characterized this as a legal expense and took it as a tax deduction. That is a state and a federal crime. Come on, Andre, you know this. You know enough about the IRS here in this country. They do a hell of a good job.
Well, okay. What about then the point that I made to you about Alvin Bragg being somebody who was elected with money, with a donation from George Soros as a Democrat in order to prosecute Trump?
Okay, let's go back. Mm-hmm. George Soros did not give any money to Alvin Bragg. There was a PAC involved that was overall the color PAC.
Oh, okay. Sorry, John Christopher. Sorry. George Soros gave money to a PAC which funded 40 DA's election campaigns within the Democrats in order to be anti-Donald Trump. I mean, okay, I abbreviated that transaction. you admit that, don't you? You old shark. You old shark.
You know what I'm doing here, my brother? I'm watching the local news, and I'm a New York City boy. I know 100 Center Street. I know where the tombs are. This is what Charles Dickens named the tombs years and years ago. Now, Trump is going to come here. He's flying in Monday. I don't know where he's going to stay. Maybe he'll stay at the Trump Tower if the Saudis give him their suite. And then he's got to truck on downtown to Center Street. He's going to have to go to the DA's office and get mugshot. He's going to have to get his fingerprint. They don't do it with ink anymore. They do it digitally. And then he's going to have to make his way, I guess, through tunnels, through underground passageways to the courtroom to meet the judge. And it's the old standard. Here comes the judge, because the judge will then hand him and read him the indictment, and they will say, do you have anything?
Okay, Errol.
Guilty or not guilty? And he probably will let him go under his own reconnaissance.
Okay, can I bring in Errol now? Look, I think John Christopher's got a point. There are significant questions to be answered here, aren't there, about it? I mean, I don't personally care what happened in terms of campaign donations, but I suppose if there are issues of tax, maybe it's right that he answers them. After all, this is a country that believes in innocence until proven guilty.
Yeah, it is a country that believes in innocent until proven guilty, and Donald Trump is indeed that, innocent. And we look forward to the day in court. Now, if Donald Trump's issue is related to his tax problems, he's got multiple tax accountants and lawyers who've signed off on everything he did. And those people, of course, have a fiduciary responsibility and legal responsibility to their client.
Yeah, and
Michael Cohen also has a fiduciary.
Hang on, John Christopher, just give us a second, because we've got loads of time. Errol, continue.
Michael Cohen is a convicted felon who told lies, and along with Stormy Daniels, who has denied this affair occurring. This will not hold up in a court of law.
My thinking about this is as far as I saw an interview with Stormy Daniels where she said that she'd had sex with Donald Trump and she didn't want to do it, but it was consensual. Now, that to me means that she did it for a reason that was other than physical attraction or sexuality. And that presumably was in order to tell everybody and extort money out of the man.
It definitely was, and then she had to come out and sign a document saying there was no affair, and that was her official statement in court. She lost in court in a much lower level, a civil court, which is just beyond a reasonable doubt, beyond any, like 51%. She couldn't win in a court of law. So if Donald Trump's behavior...
We call it on balance of probability.
There we go. On balance of probability. Now, Donald Trump's behavior isn't helpful to him. It's not helpful to the party. Whether or not Stormy Daniels did or didn't do any of this certainly hasn't been a boon for him. But if the Democrat Party overplays their cards here and they walk right into this, easy trap that he's got set, you're going to prove him right that they were trying to put him in jail. You've got all these trumped up charges in a borough of Manhattan. It's not going to stick, and that's the end of the discussion. They're going to have their moment, but that's it. Now,
it's fair to say that John Christopher has been chomping at the bit. John Christopher, do you want to just respond to Errol?
Why would Donald Trump pay a woman $130,000 if he wanted to keep her quiet, if he never had sex with her? Come on, this is Trump logic. I've known Donald Trump for 60 years. I lived a mile away from him. I'm from Queens, New York. Donald Trump's problem is he grew up on the wrong side of the East River. He never was a posh boy. He never went to the good schools. And he's been trying all his life, including his daddy's money, after his daddy took down Coney Island and made it into a slum. He has a reputation of suing, countersuing, and a sleazebag, and he is. And the fact that he was president for 4 years and the country wasn't completely destroyed is some kind of miracle. And this
why not just leave him to it? I mean, look, Richard Nixon was a co-conspirator. Richard Nixon wasn't charged, and in reality, from what I can see about the Watergate affair, really wasn't charged for the good of the American nation. Is there no argument to be made that this rips the country in half?
I teach politics in the media at university. Now, you brought up a very interesting character, Richard, the historical perspective, and I find this fascinating. From a historical perspective, Richard Nixon could have suffered the same fate for his actions in Watergate, but he did not because he was smart enough. He resigned. Now, he was not impeached, and Gerald Ford pardoned him. Now, Gerald Ford was always considered a good guy. He was criticized severely. He said he declared our national nightmare is over. Now, he was vilified for letting Nixon go, but I think many think he should not have, because if he didn't let Nixon go and Nixon was in fact prosecuted, Trump wouldn't have gotten the idea.
If the
president does it, it's not illegal.
John Christopher, what is your outcome here? I mean, are you going to say to me, and it would be legitimate to say it, by the way, look, actually, this has got nothing to do with him being president. This is purely a rule of law issue. Or are you going to say, look, we have a duty as a political party, the Democrats that is, or the Democrat Party rather, have a duty to take down political opponents in the most fulsome way possible?
No, I don't think so at all. In fact, we have a gun problem here. And I've been on the TV and I've been at the White House talking about all the young people who are slaughtered with guns. And I'm out there talking about it on my website and on my Twitter at JCBUA, saying that this is not a Democratic problem. This is not a Republican problem. This is a problem where we all must come together and have an assault weapons ban in this country. And the Republicans don't want to do it, but there are many Republicans who believe in it.
It's interesting, John Christopher, that when I talk to you about the judicial problems of Donald Trump, you very quickly move on to banning of AR-13s or whatever they're called. I understand why. I understand why you're saying that, but it does talk to the central concept that Errol and the Republicans have got, that in reality, your interest is in removing Donald Trump from the body politic, and it isn't necessarily about his individual activities.
I think if the voters understand, and the MAGA voters, his disciples, as I call them, they deify him, they have made a Christ figure out of him, and I assume that if he gets a chance, he's going to have his crown of thorn moments when he goes to the DA, so the world can see him before Pontius Pilate, and he will be the martyr, and that's what they want. And I think it's pathetic. And all the Republicans, so many of them who aren't very bright, have deified him, and they made a Christ figure out of him.
Okay, John Christopher, John Christopher Bill, we're going to leave it there. He's the White House correspondent for Real Political News. But just the final word I'll give to Erol Morkoc, because I do think it is interesting that John Christopher, who's a good bloke, is actually sat there, just really concerned about the political side of it in terms of trying to attack the Republicans, rather than what I would see as important as, is this man a criminal? Should we be convicting somebody just because we that's what we do, convict former presidents? We're like Venezuela.
Yeah, that is where we have come to probably the most critical point of this. Like, whether or not Donald Trump is your enemy, whether or not you were part of the Republican group that chanted "lock her up," in a group, the idea that we're, as a country, about to do this to a president is going to set a precedent that we really can't come back from. So the fact that, my counterpart was so eager to get rid of the president, but is willing to do that in such a, non-legitimate way is going to be one of the biggest problems that we have going forward. And I think that it's going to set a standard that we cannot recover from as a country. Yeah. And unfortunately,
the other thing is, now I'll say this to David. David, you hear a lot of hatred there, don't you, from John Christopher Brewer, who's a sensible guy.
It seems to him Donald Trump missed his round out on more than one occasion by the sound of him. You think he'd done him at the party or something. No. I can't believe how hateful people in America have become.
Yes.
And it really is two tribes these days, the Republicans and the Democrats. And they sort of go to battle on Twitter. I think Twitter, to be honest, has.
Well, I'll tell you one thing about the American system that they must defend. You must defend, Errol, is the Electoral College, because the Electoral College was designed to balance between two things: sheer popularity and popularity in individual states. That Electoral College system was designed to stop a Hillary Clinton, popular in a few places and hated everywhere else.
Exactly.
And the Democrat Party's biggest enemy is Electoral College. They repeatedly state how much they hate it, how unfair it is that there's not a mob rule, and this is where we're going.
I think the Electoral College is what protects the American Republic, because if I was in Nebraska or Alabama or somewhere like that, and time again I saw elected in my country people who absolutely hated me, and make no mistake, that's the case of Hillary Clinton, then I'd want to leave the country.
Well, indeed, absolutely.
I'd want my state to leave the country.
I know. Say the division in America seems to be getting deeper and deeper and deeper and more aggressive, and I think potentially it's going to be very violent. And going after Donald Trump, I really think is not a wise thing to do.
Okay, Erol Morkoc, from Chief Strategist and Vice Chairman of Republican Overseas. Thank you so much. Well, David, I have to say we've got a little bit more, but now we're going to be talking about Russians and Belarusians being able to play tennis at Wimbledon.